gonna hit the start button. And we are so happy to be here, very honored to be here. This is a really big moment for you all in St. Pete. This is a big project, an important project, and one I know that you've been working on for so long now. And that also gives me great happiness because I know you all have stamina, and so we're last, but I think you've all proven that you have, you're gonna keep with us because this is so important to you. So let me see if I gotta figure out how to use this. Okay, I'd like to start our discussion back when I first came to St. Petersburg, which was about 50 years ago. This was the $1 Million Pier. You know, what I remember as a kid, which was what I was at the time, are the pelicans. You know, how wonderful the wild, crazy pelicans were. But now when I look at this picture, and I think about as an architect and a landscape architect, the kind of environment that I was in. You know, it was really wonderful for its place and time, but I think now it's time to think about a different kind of way of thinking about the pier. So, you know, what we want to do today is start a dialogue with you. We want to start thinking about how the pier and the uplands relate to each other. I've heard some of the other teams talk about this. To us, it's one of the key elements of this plan. You have a fixed amount of money to spend. You know, we want to be physically responsible, we want to be sustainable, and we want to have a fun place, you know, for you all to come and have memories with all of your families and friends. So, you know, I think, you know, it's a really important time that we're going to take very seriously. And we really want to talk about this relationship with you. It's really all about how do we craft a new relationship between your city and the bay that you sit on. You know, Blue Pier is really weaving together of the city and the bay, bringing it closer to the city, bringing all those experiences right into your downtown. And we think we came to this idea from building on your legacy, how we've learned from your own history of your values and what's important to you. You know, we started looking at all the piers, you know, because we were doing the pier, it's a pier project. And we found that, you know, actually there's been a lot of piers. They've over time changed, they've even changed location. They've changed use, they've had railroads, boats, then they became pleasure-oriented. You know, the $1 Million Pier, the inverted pyramid, it's interesting how they've renewed each other over time and it sort of had to renew each other over time until is where we are today, again, thinking about renewing the pier. On the other hand, you know, in looking in your history, we've found something that we thought was really profound and that has guided your development of a city for over 100 years, and it hasn't changed. You know, this is the legacy of your emerald necklace, your parks. You know, people around the world know that you all did this and that you made that critical choice early in the 1900s that so affected how your city developed. So, it's in the spirit of this kind of civic landscape that we've approached the new Blue Pier project. We've also looked at some of your iconic images. I mean, this one's even in the Vinoy. And, you know, we noticed that actually the upland is in the foreground, that the upland is what people are enjoying in these pictures. And we've also noticed they're enjoying being in the water. You know, the pier's sort of a background element, you know, beautiful one, and it should continue to be an important part of the whole experience. But I think it's important not to overemphasize its importance in relation to these other things that are shown in your own history. The other thing you've done is, which no other county has done on the Tampa Bay, is make the aquatic preserve for your county. You know, to me that shows how interested you are in being stewards of your landscape. It's a beautiful landscape. I mean, this is what the whole place used to look like. And, it's besides being a great terrestrial habitat and aquatic one, it's also a great place for people. People love coming there, posting their pictures. It's this kind of thing. If it were even closer to your downtown, what a wonderful thing it would be. We've noticed that you've been noticed for this stewardship. You've attracted the Blue Ocean Film Festival and Conservation Summit. I mean, this kind of thing will continue to happen as you continue on your path to improving your city and making it a more sustainable place. And you're also working on your whole master plan and have 5 dimensions that we think are really important, and we've tried to incorporate as well the stewardship that I've been talking about, enhanced experience with your environment, making it be an active waterfront, making it be economically vibrant and connected to the city and accessible to all. So we really believe that the economic value begins with the environmental viability, and that also will make a fun place for people to come. So our project is, we want our discussion, or we want to have a discussion with you about, your place on the Tampa Bay and your legacy of these green spaces all about the waterfront, and how can we really make financially sustainable and ecological sustainable and fun place on the pier for everyone to enjoy. So I'm going to try to answer that or try to begin the conversation. So we want to bring the bay and the pier experience closer to the downtown. Right now it's really hard to get all the way out to the end of the pier. We want that experience to be punctuated by lots of things to do. We know from in New York where people, when there's stuff happening on the street, you don't feel like you're walking as far. You have this along your Beach Drive as well. People promenade along Beach Drive, and that's not an unpleasant experience. So walking up the pier can be a pleasant one, and it can combine with the lagoon experience, bringing the bay even closer to the downtown. So I want to, this experience is composed of 2 things chiefly, the lagoons and the pier. So the lagoons are an organic, sort of sinuous landscape of land and water that are carved into your existing uplands. And the pier, in contrast, is very crisp, architectural, light structure that is a different experience. So when you combine these 2 together, you're really getting a big variety of kinds of places for people to inhabit. We also want to emphasize that our whole project fits within the existing footprint of your land mass and pier. So we're not doing anything outside of that that would cause permitting problems. We're not covering any new water. This is the plan in more detail, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we came up with it, and tell you about, then I'm taking you a walk around it. So I mentioned that the pier is pretty long right now, and it's hard to get all the way out there. And it's a little bit of a joke there. We did make it longer, but the fact is we made it longer by shifting it back towards the downtown. So we made the pier, or the extension of the pier, actually reach further closer to the downtown. I don't know if I need to point that out, but what I'm saying is, so here's the existing one. We shoved it back, left this out here for fishing, and then we took that length and then we extended it. So the pier actually starts right here, which you can see is that much closer to the downtown, than where it is today. That's the beginning of our experience. So yeah, 4 minutes instead of 7 minutes, or 10 minutes to the end instead of 12. This may not sound like a lot, but it actually, it helps pull people along, gets them engaged earlier in the experience, and then once they get engaged, we give them more things to do, so they'll keep going. So we have this sort of series of events that move along the pier, but also move around the uplands. And so there you have many choices, many kinds of things, for all kinds of people. It's not, a one big thing at the end. To give you an idea of what kinds of things I'm talking about, it's a spray pad for kids and their parents or grandparents. It's a place, a big lawn where you can fly kites or have games. It's shaded areas that you can watch what's going on. And then there's also a whole marine discovery experience, which is the lagoons themselves, the lagoon get down. We're making artificial reefs where we've carved away parts of the pier to allow more light down. We also have more seagrass that you can watch. So, it's a whole, and we have the marine screen at the end, which you might have seen, and you'll see more in our diagrams, which, is a way of seeing underwater. So you can see what's actually happening when you're on the pier, what's happening under your feet. So that's the marine discovery experience. Right in the middle, though, the pink thing in this diagram is the burger shack or cafe, where it's going to be the hub of activity. When you get tired moving in any of these directions, up here to the lagoons or down here, out here, you can always come back to this central location and cool off in the air conditioning, get something to drink, go up on the roof, have a cocktail, look out over the sunset, just sit with your kids or take them to the bathroom if that's what they need. So it's really a hub for everyone right there in the middle. This also shows in the lighter coral color, lighter pink, two other opportunities, which James will talk about later, for other, and actually there's a few other smaller ones, for other things that could happen in the future which are not in the budget. But everything else I've been talking about is totally in our budget. So I'm going to walk you around now the two parts of the plan. The lagoons, there's two of them. The South Lagoon is the bigger one. The North Lagoon is the smaller, more linear one. And you might notice on the South Lagoon that there's 4 big plaza areas that are flexible spaces. And these, let me point them out again. Right here where you enter down 2nd Avenue, right here, and right here. So basically, it's not really the corners, but spaced around the lagoon, connected by pathways, are these 4 plazas that are event places that can be used and adopted by the community in whatever ways you see fit. The North Lagoon is different. It's more intimate in scale. And at the end, we have a fireworks lawn. So sort of a highlight. Once you come through by the beach and through the mangroves, you can arrive at the fireworks lawn and then make your way back through a nature walk to the other side and end up in the broadcast plaza. We have both an intimate experience and the more urban, larger experience of the 2 lagoons. So now we're going to walk around, start with the South Lagoon. We're right to the side of the entry plaza. You see a photographer enjoying the scenery, a novice kayaker out in the safety of the lagoon, children on the lagoon get down, looking for different wildlife in the water. We continue around, and you see this is a larger, more open area. This is one of the plazas. This loop is open to vehicles as well as pedestrians and bicycles. And this can be programmed for art. It can be programmed for festivals. It can be programmed for food trucks, any number of things. And in the distance, you see, just so you understand which way we're looking, out towards the water, this is the end of the pier, our iconic sloped lawn and marine screen. Now, there is an option that we talk about not in the budget for a future public-private partnership, which would bring a large scale event pavilion and restaurant to this location on this plaza. James will talk a little bit more about that, but we're really here to focus on what's in the project. So this is in the project, this is that central hub. We've now moved around the lagoon another quarter, and we're calling it the Burger Shack. It could be your fish shack, it could be whatever you all want it to be, but we see it as a place where you could pick up on this side, facing us, just some kind of fast food at the counter. You can, under here is there's the air-conditioned part inside, place to sit under this canopy, and then the roof, which is also available for a little bit more of a view. So that 3,600 square foot restaurant is in our project and will be and there's also public restrooms. Then we continue around the lagoons to Spa Beach. We've added some dunes to make them a little more resilient. We're building the landscape up anyway because we need to get out of the floodplain for the building I was just talking about. When we're excavating for the lagoons, we're using it to fill. And then we're also making some of these dunes around the beach to make it more resilient. Now we're up in the northern lagoon, which will probably include a mangrove area. And this is a place where you can really get up and close and personal, with nature, kayak right through it, really explore for those people that want to do this sort of thing. Or there are the pathways, just to the right and left of this that are up a little higher above the water that you can also see the birds and explore the nature in that way. At the end is the fireworks lawn, which is a big public open space, can be programmed again for many things as you desire. And now we're back to where we started. So now we're going to do the pier. And the pier is pedestrian, although we do think it could be open to some sort of tram. It certainly has space for service and, fire vehicles planned in. So, that's why we know it could also hold a tram system. There's room for a turnaround there at the end. The other thing I want to point out about the pier before we get started on our walk is the fact that we've cut a lot of holes in it. It's about the same 100 feet wide at the wide points, but you can see we've carved out large areas for various activities, fishing here at the end. We've tripled the amount of fishing space, and some of the other ones, reef viewing, some of the other things I'll talk about as we move on. But this both makes the pier smaller and more affordable, and it also, though, makes it more exciting, not as linear, lots of different kinds of spaces and things to do. So let's again start at the Burger Shack, which is on the pier, and we're going to move sort of behind the way we're looking, out to the water instead of into the city, as you see in this picture. So right around the Burger Shack, there's the splash pad that kids can play in, a shaded area for people to watch the kids and also for the kids themselves, so they're not always out in the sun. This is then, we're walking on towards the Burger Shack, the shaded area where you can sit on the right, and people hanging out and sitting under the trees, sitting under the canopy, watching other people. After we leave that area, we go out over the water. This is kind of the gateway, the sea walk. And you can really tell you're headed out over the water in this drawing. And the other thing that this does by taking we are leaving the old piles that supported the original pier, and we're adding some reef pieces to that so that we're attracting more animals to this area. And it's also the height, where this is right in the seagrass band, where you have the seagrass everywhere else, but you didn't have it here because it was all dark under the pier. By letting the light in, the seagrass will colonize this area, and so it'll be a great place as you take the sea walk to see what's happening there, and also, if you take your jog along in the morning or in the evening. Here, continuing on, it's a shaded place. People can sit and just enjoy, being out on the pier. It's a place where you can watch the animals, the refueling, as I've already said. And we're gonna, we have transient boat docks in our budget, and this is a place where you also might be able to pick up a kayak and take it out for a spin. At the very end of the pier, we have it splits. And the reason for this is we want you to both be able to look out both at the bay, so those are the steps right in front of us coming down. The bay is behind us. Or we want you to be able to look back at the city, which is the one you see here, which we're calling the sloped lawn and marine screen. So these two moves, looking out at the bay this way, or back at the city, create two iconic meeting places for people at the end with very different kind of atmospheres. The marine screen is also a place where you can watch what's happening underwater, or in the evening, you might see a movie, see some music, watch a little performance, or just create a performance yourself with a bunch of your friends. So I believe I've covered all the things that we've tried to incorporate, which were the Pier working group options as a part of our scheme. So now I'm going to turn it over to Martin Berry, who is very happy to have as an associate in our office. He has great design sense, and he's also incredibly tenacious. So he's really going to make sure we can get this built.
I try to be kind as well. Thanks, Barbara. We're really excited about this project. Some people might call us crazy, but we're excited about it for a number of reasons, and it's a very complex project. We're used to these types of projects. We're used to competitions. We love competitions, not just for their architectural merit, but because we like to build stuff. So we realized the first thing when we put this proposal together was that this is a very complex project, socially, politically, environmentally, and you can't really accomplish and build a project without a good team. So the first thing we did was to think about who is on this team. It's not just W Architecture. So this is probably the most boring slide of the presentation, but perhaps one of the more important slides. It's who are you going to be working with in the city of St. Petersburg to get this done. We put together what we think is the best national team and local team of engineers, artists, graphic designers, economists, and wayfinding consultants and community participation consultants to work with the Pier working group, the community, and the city, and also to work with the city of St. Petersburg and Skanska, who we've also already put in a lot of time with. So who is that team? Stantec is our engineering consultant working on such things as civil, structural, restoration ecology, transportation, and surveying. Stantec, if you don't know, is one of the largest engineering firms in the world with over 15,000 people. They're an incredible firm that focuses a lot on sustainable planning and sustainable infrastructure. We're really proud to have them on the team, who's done projects such as this at Robinson Preserve, which is something like 29 acres of restoration ecology of mangroves and lagoons and things, just like we're doing here. A good waterfront project needs to be resilient, and it needs to have a great marine and coastal engineer. And Coastal Tech Corporation, we think, is one of the best marine engineering firms and coastal marine engineering firms in South Florida, doing projects like the Pelican Reserve here. W Architecture knows, because we work on a lot of public space projects and municipal projects, that we need a great community and government relations consultant. So Kimberly Jackson is here. She's helping us hopefully when we get this project to start working with the city to craft a really good stakeholder engagement process. And that's what we're used to doing around the world and around the country. And we're really excited to do it here, because that's really when the project starts. We're just giving you a vision, and we really want to work with the city. Piers are really complex structures. Piers need incredible engineers. Musa Rutledge, some of you might know, is probably the most talented geotechnical and marine engineer in the country focusing on piers. They're working on a number of large iconic piers in New York and along the eastern seaboard, such as the Thomas Heatherwick Pier here being built in the Hudson River in New York. Incredibly complex structures, incredibly complex engineers. Roderick Ellman, the principal there, has over 35 years building these kinds of piers. James Lima is an exciting consultant for us. James Lima, Planning and Development. He's our economist, market specialist, and the reason why we brought him on this project particularly is for public-private partnerships to craft the right economic environment to leverage the private sector to create some of these amenities on the site, which he'll talk more further about. James is involved in some of the most exciting projects in North America in terms of urban development and public space, like Pier 57 in New York, and also the Governor's Island project in New York, one of the largest park and public space projects in the country right now. Engineering, for structural engineering, we chose Robert Silman because we like working with them. We've worked with them on over a dozen projects. We're working with them on creating structures that are efficient and sustainable and pleasing. And Robert Silman has already put in a lot of time on some of the structures that Barbara showed you, like the marine screen and the sloped canopy and sloped lawn. They're incredibly efficient engineers, and they're really great to work with. Probably the most important consultant I'm going to present you with is Gardner & Theobald in terms of cost consulting. Gardner & Theobald has already put in a lot of time with us, getting this project under budget. And they're working on, I think, some of the largest projects in the country in terms of public space. Again, Brooklyn Bridge Park here, which probably rivals Governor's Island for one of the biggest and most iconic new public spaces in New York. They're a London-based firm with offices in New York and Washington and Miami, working on one of the largest cultural projects in Miami with Rem Koolhaas. We have the marine screen, but we also have a lot of lighting that we're thinking about for the project. So we've chosen a RUP. And Lenny Schwenninger, who I think if the architects in the room would know is probably the best lighting designer in the world. Lenny's focusing on lots of different structures, and she believes what we believe, and that lighting is also not just a way to make a place safe and enjoyable, but it's actually an economic driver as well. If you can create a place that people like to visit and use lighting as a sort of art piece that is also functional, you can use this as an economic driver for the project. The project needs to have a life of its own. We work with 212 to create identity and branding. David Gibson is the principal there. He's kind of the guru of wayfinding in the United States. He's written essentially the book on how to get around public spaces and how to get around architecture in terms of wayfinding. So David Gibson will be helping us create branding strategies, identity, and also that wayfinding. And finally, W Architecture, that's us. We are landscape architects, urban designers, and architects. Barbara is one of the very few people in the country who's a fellow of both AIA and ASLA. We're a woman-owned firm. And we focus primarily on waterfront public spaces. We've done over 50 waterfront projects and piers around the world. We do these projects in a way that creates spaces that are flexible. We know that successful public spaces are adaptable and flexible. They're great for big crowds, and they're great for like this guy on this platform here. They need to be intimate and romantic, but also be able to accommodate large crowds. Like our project here on the Brooklyn waterfront. This is one of the first projects built in the Williamsburg waterfront and the new redevelopment there. Real estate in this area has increased by something like 250% since this project has been implemented for a number of reasons, because the waterfront is turning green, but also because it's going to have spaces that can accommodate places, people like this, that a young demographic, old demographic, families, and that it can become different over time and it can become adaptable. We're working a lot on creating new environments and working with the ecology to create better places for people to get down to the water. Everyone loves water. It's such a great thing to have in cities. It's a tremendous gift you have here. It's something that Calgary also has. So this project is in Calgary, currently under construction. And we show this image because we're doing something very, very similar in Calgary by opening up a new channel in an existing island that's 40 acres. It's the largest public space project in Calgary. And it's about kind of getting people down to the water, connecting the river on both sides of this island. And we've navigated the permitting processes in Canada, and we're building this. This will be open in August. We're now working on a lot of resiliency projects. So resiliency is becoming kind of buzzword since Hurricane Sandy and a lot of the storms that have wreaked havoc on the eastern seaboard. We're now working with a lot of consultants to create places that are economically, environmentally, and socially sustainable and resilient. So we're working on a lot of these big projects on the eastern seaboard now. A lot of what Blue Pier is about marine discovery. The entire place is a marine discovery center, which I think is important to understand. In terms of the end of the pier and sort of where we're talking about marine discovery, it's the largest point, or the elevation of which we're raising 4 to 6 feet at the very end. And we're having this marine discovery center within what Barbara described as the marine screen, which is on the bottom. So I'm showing the existing elevation versus the new elevation. And this is about views, about the bay. And it's also about seeing what's on that marine screen and about water clarity. So in terms of water clarity, we found that in Middle Tampa Bay, the water clarity is actually about 8 to 10 feet on average. So that's about the depth that seagrass grows. And it's about the depth that lots of waterborne creatures like to have. So that's exactly the depth that will be in the lagoons, and exactly the depth we'll probably be projecting some of these images from. We have a little water clarity video here this is Tampa Bay Artificial Reef Group, taken from Middle Tampa Bay. I think this is a group of flounder. As you see, it's a quite clear environment. And there's a lot happening. It's exciting. And this is completely buildable. The Marine Discovery Center, the lagoons that we're talking about, it's created within the uplands. There's a tidal connection. It's much like the project that Stantec worked on at Robinson Preserve. So we think this is entirely buildable. And it's really a great public benefit because there's public access and use. So as Randy Runnels, the aquatic preserve manager for the county said, all it takes is a look underwater to understand why these 2 aquatic preserves are located in Florida's most densely urbanized county. The abundant, diverse aquatic resources must have been a key attraction to early settlers, and we think it's going to be a key attraction to residents and tourists alike here at Blue Pier. We want to work with potential partnerships. We've identified a number of groups and organizations and institutions in South Florida that are working on marine environments that the city could perhaps work with on this marine screen project we're presenting. The project is permittable. As Barbara briefly described, this is the existing site in Pier, and this is Blue Pier. Everything exists within the footprint of the land. So we're excavating lagoons within a filled environment. This is all filled land out there. So we're just uncovering what was there naturally. I won't go through all of the permitting considerations. We can talk about them if you have questions after, but some of the things we should really think about is that we're reducing the pier footprint over water, which is great. We have no additional impacts to the natural resources. We're actually increasing the seagrass development by 3 times. There's no clay liners. This is a totally natural lagoon that we're creating. And there's a net gain of natural resources, historically lost to coastal development. So restoration of the uplands is really intended and expected to improve water quality here. Because you have parking lots and grass, grass is essentially an ecological desert. All it provides really is chemicals to the water and sediments. So it creates an environment that there's poorer water quality because of that, because of the runoff. So by creating lagoons and things, we're able to filter the water, the stormwater runoff before it gets into the bay. This is the existing seagrass diagram. So as you see, and Barbara quickly explained it. We'll go back. The seagrass is here. In the existing pier, we're showing the proposed, but in the existing pier, this is all solid. So there's no seagrass underneath because of the sunlight. So in the next diagram, we see that we increase the seagrass by 3 times because it will grow in this lighted area now with sunlight, and it will grow in the lagoons as well. And this is just an example of the diverse ecologies that we're presenting and that we're going to be creating here. So Blue Pier lagoons will be 90% flushed within 2 to 3 days. The Army Corps of Engineers allows 4 days. This is a very preliminary study. We think it's accurate, and we're looking forward to the permitting process where we can study this further. This is the tidal fluctuations of Tampa Bay. So as you see over a 24-hour period, the tides are coming in and out. So the flushing study will in many ways be adapted to how the tides are working in this area. Okay, so the project is on budget. Everything we showed you, with the exception of those peach sort of buildings, which James will talk further about, is $32.9 million. And what's interesting and exciting about this for us is that we've provided, I think, a lot of really interesting and diverse experiences that can make this really great, build on this really great civic legacy that you guys have already started with improving the waterfront landscape, that then drives income and real estate values downtown. So all these experiences for $32.9 million is quite great. In terms of phasing, everything we showed you in the green area, this is all the public spaces that are built in phase one. The pink building, which Barbara described as the burger shack, or the lobster shack or whatever, this could be built in phase one as well. And the other buildings James will talk about are in peach. These are public-private opportunities either built subsequently or after the fact. Schedule, we don't have to talk a lot about, but what we're thinking is that this is probably about a year of design and permitting and about 18 months of construction. We think the permitting and design can happen concurrently so that we're ready to start construction sometime, the bidding process would be sometime in July 2016, and then hopefully in summer 2018 we're opening this park. And now James Lima is going to talk about return on investment and how we're going to market this place.
Thanks, Marty. Good afternoon. I'm sorry I don't have any videos. I want to talk about positive return on investment. Positive ROI refers to the direct and indirect economic returns to the city of its patient upfront capital investment in placemaking. It also refers to how Blue Pier will reinforce and enhance St. Petersburg already impressive position as a city of choice in which to live, to work, to visit, and play. It refers to getting you also the most quality public space for your money. And we think we've done a really terrific job in creating a lot of really diversely programmed and usable space that also just happens to be potentially generating a significant amount of revenue to pay for the operations and maintenance of the park in a way that the city hasn't been able to rely upon in the past. Our team prides itself on helping our public sector clients to succeed in executing vision plans for great new urban spaces around the country that meet local community needs and are grounded in market reality. We therefore thought hard about where the revenue generators to support the park, but also the programming activation, the way that the local community in particular, the downtown workers and local residents, where they would be most likely to return again and again to use the pier as part of their daily life in the city. And, it was very interesting for us, to think about, and we're intrigued with the challenge of repurposing the existing inverted pyramid and bridge structure. Some have compared your pier to the Chicago Navy Pier. But it's worth, reminding ourselves that St. Pete is a city of roughly a population of 250,000, whereas, Chicago is a city of more than 10 times that population. So how can a configuration of a very long pier, essentially an object very separate from the daily life of your downtown, be a sustainably maintained economic and social hub for your city? We saw images yesterday of the demolition of the $1 Million Pier in 1967, a beautiful structure. And of course, in 2011, the city was prepared to demolish the inverted pyramid, which reinforces for us our team's belief that, essentially, the fundamental problem of the inverted pyramid is really not an architectural one. It's an economic and programming problem. I work a lot around the country with urban waterfronts, and waterfront retail is a very tricky business to be in. Essentially, if you draw a circle, a radius around your waterfront retail site, essentially half of your market is fish. So unlike most places where retail goes, you've lost half your potential customer base. And yet we're so enamored and so seduced by waterfronts that we've got to figure out ways to create civic places and really active uses of them. So the challenge for us was, how do we continue the rich tradition of a civic landscape and a civic bayfront, but also find ways to make it more economically enduring to be a continuum for the downtown and to pay for itself to a greater extent than it does today. Barbara showed the walking distances, and so the significant change for us is your 4 minutes walking distance to our programming hub at that Lagoon Plaza with a fantastic new cafe next to a great kids splash park, next to an incredibly beautiful lagoon system, an ecosystem, potential for a next phase restaurant, which would be a spectacular venue, as opposed to 12 minutes to go out to an object that is largely internalized, that while it has good views of the city, really is challenging in terms of relating directly to that regular life of the city. So we want to look at who are the people who are going to use the pier? Who is this for? And there are 3 core user groups for downtown waterfronts that really are important here. In your case, the downtown residents and workers are our most important population to consider. They're the ones who will come back frequently and really sustain the place civically and economically. The greater St. Petersburg marketplace is obviously a really important potential target market as well. And naturally, the tourist visitors really can be a really important piece for the larger citywide economy. The Blue Oceans Film Festival is a great example of how to completely brand the place as a place of choice on an international stage. So this shows you 3 layers of users, residents in blue, workers in orange, and visitors in the light green. And the total is really mostly the sum of those first 2, residents and workers. What we want to do is to bump you up in a big way by having incredible placemaking, incredible range of places that have different programming for different groups of people at different hours of the day, all night, every single day of the year. I'm working in a waterfront park in Minneapolis, worked on a lot of waterfronts in New York, the Toronto waterfront. You have fantastic weather that none of those places have. So we have an opportunity here to really leverage the assets you have locationally, a vibrant city, spectacular weather, a beautiful bayfront. These are good places to start. And so we believe we can drive programming of public spaces in a significant way. This chart shows how important programming and revenue generation is in public parks. Publicly sponsored parks generally don't have a very hard time putting together the capital funding for those parks. What governments are usually terrible at everywhere around the country is planning for the sustained recurring sources of operating revenues to sustain those public spaces. So we build them and then we don't necessarily have the money to retain them. And so you can see the 20-year value of operating expenses in light blue in some cases is actually higher than the upfront cost. So we talk a lot and need to focus on the $33 million cap, but we want to make sure that we also understand where we are going in terms of committing ourselves on operating revenue. So we're really happy that our scheme to begin with is the lowest in terms of projected operating costs, but we're also being very careful to integrate in ways that are both additive to the public park experience, but also really sensitively integrated in terms of the way they look and feel, earned income opportunities. And that generally falls into 2 categories. One is concessions revenues that meet the needs people want. People want to have a perch, an urban perch, to sit and have a drink, have a meal, get together with friends. We've heard that for the last 2 days. We also know that you are becoming an increasingly important place for events. So that film festival is just one example. There are many, many ways to leverage the value of that and all the other good things that are happening in your downtown. Like, how can your infrastructure and your marketing and the places that get created at your central waterfront help you to not only generate revenue, but to capture it and redirect it back to public benefits, which means operation and revenue sources of funding for your park. So we'll look at the whole range of strategies of public funding, special levies, your TIF district, the food and beverage revenue, special events, philanthropy, corporate sponsorship, and the like. Again, the focus for us was on two things: concessions revenues and special events programming. I'm going to talk a little bit about future potential phases for concessions revenues as well. In all cases, it's critical that any concessions be the highest quality. They have to represent and signal the character and quality of the park experience and the pier experience, but also really express your values of it being a civic place. For the similar project I'm working on for the Minneapolis Parks Foundation, we talked to all the best food purveyors in Minneapolis, which has an incredible food culture, and tried to get them really interested in the idea of operating the pavilion in this new park, and that has been incredibly fruitful. So we can work with you on not only planning for the right places for these kinds of things to exist, to add to the park, but to really understand how, on the private operator side, what they want, what they need, and how to set the table for the most favorable private market response when you're ready. Cities around the country where I'm working, everyone wants a Shake Shack. It started in New York, but they're now all over the country. They just issued an IPO. It's high quality fast food that makes people happy. It's burgers, it's incredible milkshakes. The lines are, very long, but people love it. It's joyful, it's communal. It's an experience. It's not just about the food, it's an experience. So you could have a local version of that, something really authentic, but we think a pavilion that just fits into a beautiful park landscape that provides amenities. In our case, it's situated at that lagoon plaza, this hub of activity. Again, if you're 4 minutes away from downtown and you say, hey, I've got my lunch break, would I go there? Yeah, I'd go there. Would I go all the way out to the end of the pier? I don't think I have time at lunchtime to do that, but I like the idea of it. After work, you don't have a lot of time, you'll go there. How can we program this so that family-friendly activities at Spa Beach, at the lagoons, and at this location create a really important node? And so even if you never make it further out on the pier, which we hope everyone always does, you've had an incredible pier experience right here. We think by this being more relevant to the life of downtown will make it more enduring and more likely to be sustainable and also valuable for the park. So it's $250,000 to $400,000 a year in projected revenues to the city based on comparable projects around the country. Special events revenues. I think the city could be doing much more to generate revenue as it thinks about the quality and character of these new spaces. Our fireworks lawn at the north overlooking the Vinoy and out to the bay, what I call the clamshell, that tiered lawn that has a beautiful view back to the city, and other venues. And then for additional revenues, again, these orange sites are future sites. So to unlock the value that you're going to create in this spectacular pier and park, I strongly urge that we think about the future marketing of an additional site that would be, maybe in our case, an 8,000 square foot restaurant and event venue. I mean, who would not want to get married at a beautiful location on the bay, overlooking this lagoon, in walking distance to all these beautiful photo shoot locations? It could go in a variety of places. It could go at that location in the foreground, but it could also go in the background on a site that is very comparable to the Boathouse in Central Park, this beautiful restaurant on a lake where, it's constantly booked for weddings and generates enormous revenues. The important thing that we're doing here is saying, build a spectacular public place, and then you've set the table, you've created value in the way that the High Line was opened, and by phase 2, every concessionaire wanted in and was willing to pay to get in. So don't negotiate from a position of weakness by doing that early. Build phase 1, prove success, and then negotiate for the big restaurant moment that can generate significant revenue. You can see we're projecting revenues in phase 2. We have discussed before the idea of a broadcast studio, live from St. Pete. If Jennifer Lopez is selling something on the Home Shopping Network, that should be happening in this park, on the pier, live from St. Pete Pier, and your identity and brand about what's going on here, the vibrancy of the place, the excitement of celebrities coming to your film festivals. You're really on a world stage. You're sharing a film festival with Monaco, for goodness sake. I mean, it's pretty incredible. the city's really on an upward trajectory in terms of its economic value. We also want to create spaces, though, that are for everybody. So you should be able to come to this pier and not have to spend money, but have a great experience, the family, to come to the splash park, to come to the beach, to have small food vendor options at a right price point. The bait shop is there out on the end of the pier. And so in total, we see about $500,000 to $650,000 in revenue in the first year against, again, what is the lowest operating cost for all of the schemes. So we think the city's obligation long-term will quickly diminish. Examples of successful parks show that revenues escalate quite quickly in terms of earned income. And for all phases, we're at $1 million to $1.5 million, again, projecting based on comparable projects around the country. And then just quickly, so a civic icon. So what are the ways that the quality of public space, the quality of programming, that it basically creates an armature for all the creative not-for-profits in the arts, in environmental science, in education. You can come and become the owner of this space. We're just creating the infrastructure. We're creating this great civic landscape, an extension of your great waterfront today. And you're going to populate it. You're going to figure it out. The city doesn't have to program everything. It's just setting it up in a way that creates ownership so that everyone's thinking about it. And this brand, this identity becomes joyful and becomes part of everyone's daily life here, first and foremost for the people who live here, and then for those who work here and visit. So we really want to emphasize that point that it's about creating that civic landscape where you come together. Back to Barbara.
I'll just wrap it up, reminding you that we want you to think hard about where your city's going, how it should relate to the Bay, what's its future, how are your values going to be shown in what you build with and for your citizens. And that, as James said, this is a place, we're trying to help create a place that you all can take ownership of. There's many, many places at Blue Pier that can be used for different activities and can change over time. It's your legacy of open space, that we want to build on, that we think building on this will take you into the next century. So we hope it becomes a beloved civic space for everyone to enjoy, and thank you very much for having us here today.